would wait for that ice cream truck every night to come by, and you would hear the bells or the song, from blocks away. And you would just wait, and you would hear it getting louder and louder. It's getting closer and closer. And as soon as the truck turns the corner onto your street, you're so excited. And you're like, hey, I've got a quarter. I could get something, right? So when the truck pulls up in front of your house and you look at all the stuff on the menu there, what am I going to get? A fudgicle, a creamsicle, a popsicle, ice cream cone, what? You finally decide what you want to get. And there's nothing in the world that matters at that moment. You're not thinking about school starting next week. You're not thinking about going school shopping. You're not thinking about anything else in the world but eating that popsicle. And you enjoy it and you savor it and think about it, how good it is. Because if you don't, it's going to melt. And that's the way life is. If you don't stop and savor that ice cream, it's going to melt away. It just made me more aware of the now, rather than the future or the past. Or I really didn't care about the concert or whatever was happening down the road. I was just more focused on now. And it was a good lesson to me, because it's like, if only we can have that mindset of savoring life now, savoring every breath, right?
After you experience the loss of breath and the difficulty breathing, the human basic need.
That crossed my mind. I was like, why did I waste all the breaths that I did in the past? If only I had one extra breath right now,
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. I have a familiar guest if you've been around with us for the last 4 months. We have the author here, Greg Smith of An Unbreakable Spirit. It's a book about his life with Brittle Bones, and it was the way that we connected and became fast friends. So Greg, welcome back to the channel.
Thanks for having me, Jillian. I'm always honored to be back with you. I've been checking you out these months, and you've had a lot of cool guests on, and it's real, not only very informative, it's a lot of fun too.
Today, of course, our theme together is about crushing things. So whether it's stereotypes or misconceptions or malaligned priorities in our society today, you'll have to stay tuned to figure out what we crush. But just to give some context, Greg was sharing with me, he just is recovering from pneumonia, and that's on top of his life journey with Brittle Bones. And it really caused him to reflect a lot. And that is what we really want to share with you today, so you can join and really ground yourself in what really matters in life. So Greg, would you like to share with the audience some things that happen and how that has impacted your mindset?
Over the summertime, I wasn't feeling well. And I just thought it was just a cold or something. I just felt achy all over and very fatigued. And I just thought it would go away. Well, to make a long story short, it didn't. When I started becoming very short of breath. And I went to the doctor and they did the COVID test. It wasn't COVID, but they did say that I had pneumonia, which I never had before. And they gave me some antibiotics and said, go home, you'll be fine. Well, I wasn't. The next day, I felt worse. So I went back to the ER. I said, I'm not feeling good at all. And they did some more tests and they ended up keeping me for 3 days. And it was scary because, I had never had pneumonia before. And because of my status of having brittle bones, osteogenesis imperfecta, I've always been told by my doctors that it's very important to be aware of things like bronchitis pneumonia, because I do have a 50% reduced lung capacity, because of my body shape, my body type. So so that was scary when they told me you have pneumonia. It's like, okay, this is what I've heard about, and this I've tried to avoid for a long time. And it was funny because all through the pandemic, I'd been good. I've been wearing masks. I really didn't go out. I just stayed home. The only time I went out during that period was the doctor's appointments. And of course, got our vaccines and boosters. And I did everything I was supposed to do. And I didn't get COVID. So that was cool. But here then I ended up getting pneumonia. So, I think other than the physical aspect, like we talked about, it affected me psychologically too. It sort of made me slow down and reassess my life and what's important in life. And like we said before, I felt like life was giving me a timeout and saying, you need to go to the corner and you need to sit down and take a time out and rethink things, Probably the worst part was I went into the hospital on a Friday night, and that night I was supposed to go to a concert to see Elton John. And I'd been looking forward to that concert because, a lot of our shows were postponed or rescheduled because of the pandemic. So I was really looking forward to this show for literally a couple of years. Yeah. So and I really wanted to go. In fact, it was the afternoon of, and my wife Holly said, you don't look good. You don't sound good, And I felt very tired and sore, and I was just. And when I went to the dinner table, we ate about 3:00 and we were going to go to the show, and I just couldn't catch my breath. I was and wheezing and all this. And I said, I'm fine.
Yeah.
trying to mask it, and it wasn't working. So, I finally said, okay, you're right. We need to go to the hospital, which for me was a big step.
And just so for context, because even in your journey with Brittle Bones, it's always been very apparent to me that you live life at its full capacity and you know yourself well, and you're just a joy. I see your sports posts all the time, and you really go out as much as you can and really dive into the things that make your life really fulfilling. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, as much as I can.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even before this, it was just, I just got to the point where I had always been like that. I mean, my brittle bones limited my ability to live life really to the fullest, because there were certain things I couldn't do, especially when I was a kid. But as I got older and my condition stabilized somewhat, I was able to go out to more ball games and concerts and things like that, and really try to make the most of life as I could. So anyway, getting back to this pneumonia thing, that's what was hard, because all of a sudden I was stuck in bed and I couldn't. Everything in the hospital was inaccessible. My house is very accessible to me, and I can get out into my wheelchair and use the bathroom, or go out to the kitchen and get a drink of water, or whatever I want to do. The hospital wasn't. All of a sudden I was thrown into this environment that it just wasn't accessible to me. I was stuck in bed, and I know I needed to be there, but that didn't make it any better, And I've just started feeling hopeless. I really did. And that was the first time I think in my life that I started feeling that way. Even during the times when I would break a bone and then be in a cast for 8 weeks and then break another bone, it was just a continuous cycle of broken bones when I was a kid. Even then, I didn't feel hopeless. I felt like there was going to be a way out, that there was light at the end of the tunnel somehow. I think my parents helped me to feel that way, but this time was different. This time I felt like, because I've been told so many times to avoid things like pneumonia, and because this was the first time in my life that I couldn't catch my breath, and I was scared,
Yeah.
And so, and not only that, I sort of was in this, and I think, as I told you, I used to be a social worker, and I have the utmost respect for medical professionals. After working with doctors and nurses and therapists for over 30 years, and I really do. But it seemed like the people who were taking care of me at this time, they were just very regimented in their thoughts, and that this is what we need you to do. You do this, you do that, you do this. And I was like, but I know what works for me. I know what works for my body. I know what works for me as far as accessibility is concerned. So I felt trapped in the hospital bed. It was in the middle of summer. The air conditioning wasn't working. It was hot in the room. I was sweating. I had all these bedclothes around me. And I think things came to a head, Jillian. It was a Saturday night. It was about 2:00 in the morning. And I woke up. I couldn't sleep, and I just wanted to give up, And I thought, nobody could. I was thinking of excuses for giving up. I was trying to convince myself. And I'm like, well, nobody could blame me for just giving up. I had survived all these years with brittle bones, and I made a good run of it, but this is it, and I just felt very hopeless and very helpless, trapped in that bed, because there was no talk about me going home. There was no, and you know what? Everybody needs hope. Hope is the big word, right?
So an unbreakable spirit is about overcoming adversity and never giving up hope.
Yeah. And here I was giving up hope.
I want to pause there because some things that constantly come up, and what I shared with you about my journey was that sense of helplessness, the sense of being trapped, the sense of a lot of things being outside of your control. This resonates with a lot of people. And as we talk about any sort of suicidal ideation that I share openly with my journey, you were hot, probably weren't sleeping as well. We shared that you do sleep with a sleep app. You have optimized your surroundings at home. We talked about in our last video how you bought the home and you've made it accessible so you can truly live. And then you're in this circumstance where people aren't really communicating. So I had mentioned you, it happened to me too, where I was left alone in a hospital room in a different state, and that loneliness crept in. And the compounding factor of like feeling lonely, helpless, hopeless, trapped, not having control, and kind of fear of, I had lack of trust, a lot of, I know my condition better than the people taking care of me, and they're not listening to me. Like that was a frustration I had. And so it was such a psychic that I just feel at that time where, it's like, wow, how could I have gotten to that place? Our conversations is always seeing each other optimist, but never giving up hope. And in that moment, it's like so many things, and you're tired, like permission to rest, life gave you the time out. And also like in that moment, I want to offer like, oh man, I just wish I was there to prescribe some self-compassion, and also to sit there and listen, like, what do you need? Because you had some things that really the next day you shone light on what turn things around for you. Can you share what you did to help
Yeah, well, it was so strange because here I am thinking in the middle of the night that I wanted to give up, that I'm curled up in the fetal position, and that this was it. This was it. I was going to die in this hospital bed. Just that quick, I'm thinking, and I'm like, no, I've gone through too much in my life to just give up. And there's too much to live for. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to just lay here and die. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to wake up in the morning and I'm going to ask the nurses and the doctors and the therapists, what do I need to do to go home? So that I'm in an environment that is best for me, that is accessible for my needs, that I'll do whatever I have to do. If I need to go home with a concentrator, which I eventually did, I'm going to do it to get well because I want to get well. And you're not going to have to worry about me going home and just curling up in a ball in my bed and just dying. That's just not me. But if I stay in this hospital bed any longer, and they were talking about keeping me another couple of days, I said, I am going to lose what little strength I have. And when I do get home, I'm going to be useless because I'm not going to be able to be as independent as I was. And it's not me to give up, but it's slowly getting there. And you need to listen to me, give me a chance. Give me a chance to get out of bed into my wheelchair. You're telling me that sitting up is better for my pneumonia anyway, right? So give me a chance. So I said, I'm going to get up in the morning and I'm going to ask, what do I need to do to go home, right? What do you tell me what I need to do? And it happened that way, I just, I got out of bed that afternoon for the first time, and I went home.
So incredible. What's coming to mind too is how often we hear in coaching or in medicine, we want to make sure, and when you're talking about things becoming regimented, right? I see this as a big problem where things are becoming too automated. And so then we start treating a problem, not the person. And you're really capturing that holistic need to really see the human, and you co-created your healing, right? You're just like, well, this is what I need. And whatever resources that person, obviously as a social worker, resources are very well.
Yeah.
How can you help me help myself? This is what I need. And I feel like that should be what it is, especially as we've moved away from that historical type of system where the doctors just treat the patients and the patients are hands off, to more of like a co-creation of how can we help, how can we be a team? We're here to work together on this. And you really took that by the reins, and I think probably gave the people helping you a really eye-opening experience as well, to say, what do I need to change in the way I do my work?
Well, but you hit it on the head with the humanity part of it, which I tried to bring when I was a social worker,
Yeah.
And here I am laying in the hospital bed and no one's coming into me like I was when I came in to see my residents or my patients in the hospital or in the nursing home. There was no one. The only people who were coming in were people who were giving orders and saying, you need to do this, you need to do that. But I knew what worked for me. And even when I got home and the physical therapist was saying, these are the exercises you need to do to get stronger. And as I said, I respect medical professionals to the utmost. But I said, with my brittle bones, I don't know how much you know about osteogenesis imperfecta, but you can't expect me realistically to lift 10-pound weights and do exercises with them, because I would be in jeopardy of breaking a bone, So think out of the box, right? And it's like, I know what works for me. And so basically, when I did get home, I had in-home services, the resources we talked about, and they were great. But the thing that really helped in my situations was just rest, was just getting stronger every day. And not only did it help physically, but it helped mentally too, because I felt like I was back in control again in my own environment. I didn't feel so helpless, and I didn't feel so hopeless anymore. But I wanted to say, we had talked about this before. In the hospital, the day I left, got in my wheelchair and packed everything up. And as I was leaving the hospital room, I looked back. This wasn't planned. I just did it. I don't know why. I looked back and I saw the empty bed I just came out of. And, when I was in the bed, it felt so small and confined, and just like I would never make it out of it. When I looked back, as others were looking at me when they were coming into the room, the bed looked so big and it looked so empty, And I just said to myself, it's not time yet, you didn't win. I'm not giving up.
It's an incredible journey in that moment to top off the journey that we've already kind of bring people back to hear about your story in that conversation we had about your book. And also comes to mind, just the things that people don't think about with that experience that you had in the hospital. Like the hospital is not made for the mobility that you often are used to. And I think bringing awareness to those people, like how can we optimize this person's space to really help them to function up what they're used to? You're a very independent human. And we talked about that, how we celebrated because you're a big sports fan. So for anyone who missed it, can you mention what we celebrated about the accessibility in the stadium?
Oh yeah, that's great. I mean, now stadiums are very accessible, where most of the stadiums, I live in Philadelphia, so most of the stadiums around me are accessible, not only to get to your location, but when you're there to see the game without people standing up in front of you. And when I was a kid, it wasn't so, it would be where they really didn't have special sections for people with disabilities to help them enjoy the game. And, it would be people standing up in front of you, or just, that was, and I mentioned that quite a bit in my book, that what it was like growing up during that time before the ADA Act in the early 90s. What a different world, It was a world of steps, and it was just so different than it is now. And part of, like we said about the sports stadiums, was I've always loved sports, but going to the stadiums when I was younger just sort of solidified the feeling of kind of feeling second class sometimes, So, but now, it's a lot better now. It's a lot better. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better. That awareness, I think, is the key. And I think a lot of people are more aware to the fact that our local, our big venue, indoor arena, the Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia, is undergoing renovation right now. And they're actually adding more wheelchair accessible spots, and not only adding more, but putting them in locations which aren't all the way in the back, like when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. The awareness is I think is the key.
Yeah, and something that we were just talking about that kind of went with your PT and knowing your body well. When it comes to how you help to incrementally improve your strength, what kind of things were helping you the most?
A lot of rest, first of all, because when I got the pneumonia, probably the worst symptom, I mean, one of the symptoms, I should say, was just very fatigued. I just couldn't believe how tired I was, I had never felt that tired before. And even I had mentioned to you before, I just found out before last Christmas that I have severe sleep apnea. And but even with that, I just never felt as tired as I did. So I think just catching up on a lot of my sleep and resting helped me to get my strength back. And even at home here, I have to say that I went a few weeks here at home. I know taking it slow, which I know is a good thing to do, but I just got to the point that I just said enough. I'm taking the bull by the horns, and I am going to try. Maybe it's not going to work, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try not using a bedpan anymore, like I did when I was a kid. I'm going to try using the bathroom like I always did. I'm going to try getting up in my wheelchair for more than an hour at a time, and I'm going to try. I think if we try a lot of times, and with determination and motivation, it works. Again, I know what works for me. I just think, Jillian, I think you're right though. I think if someone would have came in that hospital and said, I understand, I can relate what you're going through, and I'm listening to you, and it's like, here's what we're going to do to get you out of here. Again, the word is hope, right? And it's not like, well, we need to keep you for a couple more days. I just felt the more I heard that, even though I knew what they were doing for me as far as the IV antibiotics and blah, blah, blah. But I also knew what worked for me. And I said, if I stay in this hot, small, confined hospital bed for a few more days, it's just going to waste away, I think it was important too that, everyone who came to the house to work together and to say, okay, I understand why you're advising me to do these exercises, but by the same token, my situation is, I know if I try those exercises, I may break a bone, and I don't want that, So I think it's just a matter of saying, I get it, but then again, I kind of know what works for me.
And I think vocalizing it the way you did allows that conversation afterward to be have, say, oh, I hear you. I didn't think about that. You're helping educate that person, but then maybe they will be able to provide a modifiable exercise versus if sometimes people don't understand or are afraid not to ask, or they say, I can't do that, but are afraid not to say, I can't do that. And can you give me another option that will work for me? I think that's what sets us up for not, we just get that friction. I think such a valuable lesson, say, advocate for yourself, have the conversation, because it's co-creation, right? It's not like,
What was interesting too was, as I said, this recent illness, despite what has happened to me in the past, really put things in perspective. And that I said, as much as I wanted to go to that Elton John concert, in the scheme of things, it's just sort of a trivial thing, I mean, here I am fighting to take a breath.
yeah.
And, you know, the most basic thing, it just made me more aware of the now, you know, rather than the future or the past, or I really didn't care about the concert or whatever was happening down the road. I was just more focused on now. And it was a good lesson to me, you know, because it's like if only we can have that mindset of savoring life now, savoring every breath, right?
I tell Greg, you are like a poet. Everything that you say, savoring every breath after you experience the loss of breath and the difficulty breathing, the human basic need.
You know, that crossed my mind. I was like, I, why did I waste all the breaths that I did in the past? If only I had one extra breath right now, you know?
Oh my gosh.
I mean, that crossed my mind. You know, here I am trying, you know, and it's like those things cross your mind.
Mm.
But everything, it brought everything back to the now, the here and now, you know. And again, it's that life giving you that time out, go sit in a corner and saying, maybe you just need to reassess things, you know. And I thought to myself, wow, you know, if we could just forget the pneumonia part and leave that out. But once in a while, just take time out on our own without life telling you to take time out. Just sort of refocusing and say, I got to focus on the now, and I do have to savor every moment, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I do.
And it's so, I would love to hear your perspective on this, because at times of my life where I have faced that moment of reality, I had some denial, I would say, when I was told you're probably not going to make it from my eating disorder. And I was like, nah. And I'm sure there's people in here that are like, wow, they can see you in your story, but they may not take that in and say, yeah, I also need to live for the now. And how do you think we can all ground ourselves in taking the experience and truly living it?
Wow. I just think, you know, I mean, it's something that I think I'm still learning to.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really say this is what you have to do or this is what works. I think that's part of the journey.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I agree with you. And I
Yeah.
also think it comes to mind when we communicate a lot through Twitter, which is funny because I'm not
Yeah.
active a lot, but I look forward to your tweets. And I feel having connection with people who are also grounded, that's what it's the environment. I realize very susceptible to the energy or the thoughts of the environment, to like, oh wow, like, and it's helped me to identify, like, I think this is where I need to move, or identify areas that maybe I won't spend a lot of time in, because it gets into your mind what what the values are, and they can be great values, but maybe not in alignment to your top priorities. And the things that come to mind is like the values of peace, safety, community, genuine connections, like those are also top priorities. And if we set those very intentionally and have a very clear vision of what those are, then we can measure what we're doing in a way that is strategic. You know, if I was thinking, like, I had really hard time saying no to people. I was like a people pleaser that had poor boundaries. And I
Yeah.
feel like it relates to this concept of making sure you know what really matters, having that established, and then we can set boundaries with it, even within ourselves. Like, do I really need to spend time and energy thinking about that? Or is it getting me out of alignment with my priority of being here, being present with your wife, with your dogs, with your awesome friends on Twitter,
Mm.
right? Or on sports, or what, you know, whatever is top priority to really live a fulfilling life.
Yeah, you're right. And there are certain things in life that kind of jolt us back to that here and now, that's where we really need to focus.
Yeah.
You know, it was now sports again, you know, It's always back to sports.
It is. You know what? My mom would, that's probably why I told you you were her favorite guest. And I think because she's also a sports lover, and she's like, yeah, you know, obviously you're an awesome human being, but she also loves sports.
Thanks. It was so funny because after the pandemic, and you know, during the pandemic, sports kind of went on. And if it did go on, sometimes it was without fans in the stands, which was really weird to see a baseball game or a football game and nobody's there.
Yeah.
Or cardboard people or whatever, you know? And that was so strange. And, you know, the first game I went back to, you know, where you could actually go into the stands and, you know, whether you had a mask or not, it just brought it back to life that, you know, you don't take for granted anymore, you know?
Yes.
It's just, you know, this is something that you do, you go to the games, but, you know, don't take it for granted because it can just easily go away, you know, as it did all of a sudden. And so, in fact, I'm going to a game tomorrow. And yeah, and so I think every time I go to the ballpark now, you know, it's like, wow, this is cool.
Awesome.
This is cool. You know, you kind of have that enthusiasm. You've got that, like when you were a kid of going back to the ballpark, you know, it's like, yeah, you know, life only gives you so many shots, you know what I mean? And you got to take advantage of those shots. You got to savor them and appreciate them.
And I love that vision of going with like a childlike enthusiasm and excitement, because that's coming to mind. Like I feel when we allow ourselves to really embrace the inner child that we have, and like that enthusiasm, the curiosity for life, and the innocent like interest in what our surroundings have to tell us, and the beauty that's around us, is so important to keep that. And I find in part of some, even it, like seeing me talking like, God, I got really serious. And I think having the opportunity to just open up and be like truly expressive. And that's when I hear you say sports, it's just that light that you bring to your face, that smile, and just the things that really light you up.
You know, it's funny. I'll share this with you and with the thousands of people out there.
We'll go for millions, Greg, millions.
Okay, we're working on millions. There you go. I got to tell you this. This crossed my mind when I was in the hospital. I remember, and I don't know why this did, but you know, a lot of times, you know, you think about back to innocent times when times weren't so, like you said, serious. When times were so complicated. And one of the things I used to love, and I think a lot of people still do, is ice cream. I love it. I still love it.
Nice.
All flavors.
In my mind, I was going to try to guess what would Greg's favorite flavor be.
You know, actually, believe it or not, even though I love all flavors, vanilla is still my favorite.
Yes.
Can you believe that?
We have now figured out why we are such good friends. Vanilla would be my favorite too. And you can even add sprinkles for that extra eccentric type touch.
Yes, just to kind of spruce it up a little bit.
Yeah. I knew, so Greg and I were talking how we've only known each other for a short period of time, but it seems like it's been a long time. And I'm wondering if it's because of the ice cream. We obviously had an instant connection over the vanilla ice cream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you this real quick though. So I'm thinking about ice cream. Why? I don't know. But I'm thinking about ice cream there, laying in bed, sick. And I'm thinking about when I was a kid. I guess because I'm thinking about good times during this bad time. And one of the best things, remember in the summertime, because it is summertime, is the ice cream man, the truck. You know, the Good Humor, or Jack and Jill, or whatever. And you would wait for that ice cream truck every night to come by. And you would hear the bells or the song, you know, from blocks away. and you would just wait and you would hear it getting louder and louder. It's getting closer and closer. And as soon as the truck turns the corner onto your street, you're so excited. And you're like, hey, I've got a quarter. I could get something, right? So when the truck pulls up in front of your house and you look at all the stuff on the menu there, what am I going to get? A fudgicle, a creamsicle, a popsicle, ice cream cone, what? You finally decide what you want to get, right? And there's nothing in the world that matters at that moment, right? You're not thinking about school starting next week. You're not thinking about going school shopping. You're not thinking about anything else in the world but eating that popsicle, right? And you enjoy it and you savor it and think about it, how good it is. Because if you don't, it's going to melt. And that's the way life is. If you don't stop and savor that ice cream, it's going to melt away.
I love every single piece of poetry that you give us. That's deeply impactful.
So you just do. And those are happy times, you know? And if you don't take the time to really appreciate those happy times, like when you were a kid, and remind yourself how good that felt. That's what life is all about, right?
Yes, and so much of what I talk about is with the eating disorder journey and anti-diet culture. And the things I get most upset about is how much of that took away from my enjoyment of those even small things, because it adds an element of mind drama or self-judgment or all these things. If we could just strip all of that away and just go back to what really brings us joy and happiness.
Yeah. Yeah. So there you go. Now I'm hungry for ice cream.
I bet. Yes, I was going to say what's next on your agenda. And I also wanted to say, since you did crush life today with all your valuable life lessons,
Yeah.
what do we have on hand to crush with the audience today as a symbolic measure?
Last time we crushed a grape. You remember that?
I remember that. The question is, does the audience remember that? If they didn't, we'll make sure to put
I
that.
remember that because it got all juicy. It got into the keyboard. It was all over my hands. It got sticky. It was terrible. Today it's a paper cup and it's got a little salt in it. So you might see the salt squirt out. You never know.
Nope. Oh my gosh, the mystery of life coming right before our eyes.
So today, instead of stereotypes, this is life. And we're in control of life. Life's not right. And that's after this summer and the pneumonia and stuff. This is life. So here's the life. You ready?
Oh man, I can hear that one too. Beautiful.
There you
And
go.
that's the symbol of Greg taking control of his life. Us need to take control of ours, because that was really the thing that I did that turnaround in the hospital, and also living intentionally. And I think now that we've had this discussion, I think it's going to be an element of not homework type accountability, but a joyful accountability to say like, hey, what are you up to? We'll check in. How's our crushing of life going?
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Greg, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
And I appreciate it. And of course, your life lessons and your extremely genuine and authentic friendship, which is a huge blessing to my heart and soul.
Thank you very much. I feel the same way. I really do. And as I said before, it doesn't seem like 4 months, since I've been on, but it's really great to be on. And I really am honored because you have some really, really smart and intelligent, caring people on, informative people. And I enjoy watching them. And so just to be here once in a while too is kind of cool. It's fun for me.
Yeah, and Greg, you're part of that extremely smart group, which has so much educational experience, especially with your life lessons. And I want to remind people, in your communication, I'm like, man, there's no doubt of why you became a writer, because you speak so poetically. I just want to like capture it all in writing so I can hear it and read it over and over again. But for people who have not yet gotten the book, it's called Unbreakable Spirit. It is Greg's life with Brittle Bones. I will make sure to put a link in the description. And thank you so much for being here. And until next time.
Thanks for having me, Jillian. Take care, everyone. Bye.